who's telling me how to do this, he cannot explain to me how that power comes out of the plug, how is manufacture of the stream. He have no clue, right? Because all his knowledge stop at the plug, right? If he's an electrician, it's stop at the transformer. And after that, that's all fucking taboo stuff. We don't want to know. It's high voltage, don't touch that. It's high amperage. Well, there's no fucking amp in that. It's called potential. It's not an amp yet because the pole transformer is the one who takes the potential of the high volt with the cycle into it and convert it to watts or amps. So many watts, so many amps, right? So this is how it's made. AC is creating a new transformer. The transformer is the AC manufacturer. What the food you have to put into it to create that, it's not AC at all, right? It's not AC at all. I mean, I don't care who you are and what you are and who you come from and what planet you come from. It's not AC. A frequency, which heat is resonance, lighter, a bit lighter, right? If you go right beside the flame, you should be able to hear the resonance of that flame. And the reason that flame light up a piece of paper is not because the flame run on the paper. No. It heats up the particle of the paper so goddamn bad, it light up itself. And then the paper consumes itself. It's all about priming and starting the oven. So, I mean, it's just a question of very short period of time, which will be able to literally replace total energy around this planet. I mean, the fuel, I already got that. It's just a question for me to finish that, so I can get the instrument, the proper instrument to do the test and build the prototype for igniting nitrogen under negative pressure. And I will show that, it's the only thing that's been running her whole life, or energy we call fuel. It's not fuel, it's not burning. If it was burning clean, if it was fuel, it would be burning clean, and it doesn't. Create pollution. So therefore, it's not burning. And but if you prime the nitrogen with resonance, because now I'm talking about pure resonance, not sine wave resonance, just pure resonance. And if I feed that into an intake, and when the motor is cranking up, it creates this negative pressure into the intake, and it's literally sucking air constantly. Soon that air is under negative pressure. I should be able to prime that nitrogen to whatever level of strength I want into a motor. And your motor will run just like you run with gas. But you won't have no pollution in the end. And you won't have, as a matter of fact, if you just prime nitrogen with resonance, all you're going to get is oxygen and CO2, which the two major gas on this planet, we've been depleted for the last 75 years. I was stupid and AC power coming up on the line and stuff like this. And now I got many people who work on power plant money. Some people come out with the phone and said, you're right, it's not AC going into the power line, because if it was AC, you would call it the power line. It's RF, not radio frequency, or resonance frequency, not radio frequency. So, we call it radio because it's very similar, different transmission. Radio frequency is transmitted, so you can transmit by wire, but it's mostly transmitted by air. And RF frequency is transmitted, by wire. That's why we call it the power line, or we call transmission line. We transmit this frequency. So, actually we transmit, it's not frequency, we transmit this resonance and we remove, see, that's where you release the energy, right? You make a sine wave, you take a sine wave generator, right? And you crank up the volt in the sine wave generator. So the volt is very high, and as many heads you can put, that was only got 4 heads on it, well, 4 pickups you want to call it. But some power plant, they have 144 pickups and 122 pickups and on and on. It's different, different companies, different ways. And the more pickups you have, it's full phase. And when you connect all your phase together, you have with a very high frequency, sine wave frequency, okay? So now you have to release, we have so much power, so much energy, and this sine wave, we have to release it, because this energy is wild, it's wild a little bit. It's like the wild guy in the bunch, like, a hairy guy will do crazy thing, right? It doesn't travel inside a wire, it travels on the outside wire. And that's why transmission line, when the people inspect the line, you get dropped, with an helicopter on top of the line when it's energized, you have millions of volts going through them.
That's why they have to ground themselves, but they don't have a shock. So their body stabilized, and then they can walk on an energized line, which is 2.5 to 3 million volts, sometimes 5 million volts. It's just crazy. You can walk on it with 250 to 500,000 volts. Maybe they have some. I'm only doing research, very restricted. What we were able to know. But your body can take this because it goes right through you. It's in the form of resonance with a slash, right? Well, they call that a cycle. So the cycle is this thing, here, which I'm going to give you a little view of it. I think I'll be able to see it. Let me correct that a little bit. There we go. This here, as you see, right now, you got two brushes, and each one is not connected. I'm just holding it like this, right? And as the brushes ride on this here, this means those two brushes will be connected together. As they go up the copper, they're no longer connected together, right? This is a slasher, or a cycle generator. It's got two purposes: putting a slash into your power, and then putting a stop of transmission. This means when the generator is turning, it's pushing power to one brush, right? But it's no connection with the other brush. So what's happening is it's pressurizing. It's just pressurizing before you get to the next one. And that's what we call pressure, electrical pressure. It's potential. The more pressure you have, the more potential you have. You know when you disconnect a large sparking, large arcing, when you engage power line, you can see this big white. When it disengage, when the two switch comes up, you get this big white horseshoe, and as the switch comes way away, this thing goes up, and then it goes 20, 30 feet high and snap, right? Well, this is what is called potential, because now you're stretching it, and as you're stretching it, you get bigger and bigger, because this power is literally alive, So, this is how the power plant is making power, right? They're making, they created resonance with a slash in it. They're removing the sine wave. And the way they remove the sine wave, since I explained that, when they're removing the sine wave, how you remove sine wave? Well, it's very simple. You have to put the energy coming through the generator through a spark gap, actually 3 spark gaps, and that removes the sine wave totally. So you have no more sine wave coming out. So now you're pushing that. You have no more sine wave. You're pushing into the slasher, right, or the cycler, you call it, and then it goes into transformer or power line, right? The volt get dropped to a certain level, because on the power line here for it's 14,400 volts for 240. If you want 120, you just have to push 7,200 volts into the transformer. But the pole transformer, is the one who make AC. See, what's coming out of the top line is not AC. It's resonance with a slash in it. So now you dump that into high voltage resonance with a slash in it, and you dump that into a pole transformer, the high end pole transformer. The high end pole transformer goes into the transformer, but it's not the pole transformer is not exactly a transformer like you will see into, let's say, this type of transformer. Let me show. See, this is a step up transformer or step down transformer. It doesn't work like this. So that's the problem with people always make a mistake, because they think they know about a transformer and they don't have a clue what a transformer really is, especially the pole transformer. The pole transformer, with the high voltage, you hit the wire. The wire is just a transmitting antenna, which is wrapped around the X1, X2, and X3 with insulation in between. And that end of that wire from the high voltage does not connect to anything. Okay, it's just wrapped around there and it's taped up, and then you put layers of insulation on top of it. So if the end of the wire is not connecting to anything, then it cannot be a transformer. It's a transmitting antenna over 3 receiving antenna. And the sequence and the profile of the receiving antenna drops the volt down, turn the high potential to watts, and drop the volt to 120 volts per legs, per taps from your transformer, X1, X2. And then X3 is your neutral. It goes back to the factory. So, for the transformer, you have to understand the pressure of high voltage is so powerful. It will make this transformer explode. If you energize the transformer will not put a neutral ground to the neutral line underneath, the high voltage line, it will blow. And you can ask any lineman and transformer installer and stuff like that, what happened when you got to put the neutral to it in energized transformer. The pressure builds up so bad it blows up. So I'm not inventing that. I'm not making it. It's just the way it is, right? So therefore, if the AC is made in your transformer, my question is, for all the farmer and industry, they own their own transformer, why the fuck are you paying watts for it? Because there's no watts coming out. There's no amp coming out of that line. It's called potential. It's not back into this. You cannot manipulate. You have to remove the sine wave. And you can only remove the sine wave. You cannot do it electronically. You cannot do. It's got to be done by spark gaps. And you can do vacuum spark gaps. And we're wondering, why can I buy communication spark gaps? Right? And I showed those things before, right? That's for communication, right? There you go. See if we can. There you go. Right? That's a spark gap. And that's for communication system, because they know they can't send nothing if it has a sine wave into it. It's not a physical sine wave. It just doesn't work. So by researching and digging and stuff like this, and listening to other people work on power plants, stuff like this, and the accident happened in power plant, and all around, it makes no sense the way they say power works the way it's supposed to work. It makes no sense. Then you start testing their theory and put their theory together, right? It doesn't work. So it just doesn't work. You're wasting your time. So if everything works with a spark gap, is because they need that dot and spark gaps to remove the sine wave. So this is what I discovered. And when I discovered when you put a spark gap, you can get this massive amount of energy release. Massive amount. When I run the voting machine, the whole room fill up with resonance. Also, go crazy myself. Everything goes crazy. It's just wild. But if it's handling properly, you get a shitload of energy you can create with that, because this is the base. The sine wave, start with sine wave, then you remove the sine wave from that energy, and that energy became pure potential. all you have to do is manipulate that potential properly. You know, and a new generator like this one here, easily. Soon we got the controller. Soon that's why I'm getting after YouTube, because I got to work on this controller seriously. You know, and I'm tired of listening to other people. So if you this new generator here should have enough potency to run house, no problem, on potential. So I mean, like, you know, it's too bad. You know, I gotta get out, but that's the way it is. I mean, I accumulated a massive amount of debt by doing research, and now I gotta go and see if I can live long enough and make enough money to pay my debt back. So that's why I'm getting up to YouTube. Well, those motor we call motor, they're actually not a motor. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pull that one back. You guys saw that one, right? It's just a normal LG or a Samsung. I think this one is a Samsung drum motor, direct drive for washing machine, right? But I'll bring it a little closer so you can see, right? Now you see one through three, right? So those are the three where you put the power into it. You call that three phase, right? And then all three legs are connected together. So this motor have a dead end. Hang on, a motor with a dead end? A stator with a dead end? You gotta be shitting me, right? How the fuck you get a stator with a dead end? If you have a stator with a dead end, it's not a motor in it. Because a motor have no dead end. It's a continuously, the sequence of the stator is continuously. It doesn't have a dead end. Plus, three phase, right? And the three phase motor, you get 4 fucking wire. Not 3. That's 3 power wire. Where's your fucking neutral? Can't be a fucking three phase in it. It's a fucking propulsion system. If you study railgun, if you study the fucking propulsion train in Japan, because it's motor was designed in Japan, those motor, a propulsion system, all they did, they take a propulsion system and bend it and make a 360-degree circle with it. And then what they do, they slam the drum with a magnet. Well, the drum will turn. That doesn't turn, but the drum will turn. And that's why they create a motor out of it. And this motor is so powerful compared to a regular motor. That motor is rated, I like this stuff because now they don't do that anymore. They took the stamp off. This motor is rated at, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but that's going to be a tough one. Yeah, that's going to be pretty hard to see. But I'll read it to you. Right? So the model is COM1E, 5OOP. That's the model. DC, 310 volts, horsepower, 0.92 HP. Okay, that's got less than a horsepower, right? But the motor and the controller is set for producing on the shaft 210 pound-foot torque from 0 RPM immediately. That is, got 210 pound-foot torque at 0 RPM, just turning nice and slow like this, right? And it will maintain its torque infinitely. So that means when it goes up to 1100 to 1300 RPM, when it spins for removing the water of your clothes, right? How the hell less than a horse motor can turn sometimes 200 pounds of wet clothes and a drum and a washing machine strictly on the shaft? You have to remember, this motor replaced a transmission of the old type of washing machine, right? Even if you have a belt drive, right? A belt drive, it goes from a big pulley like this into a tiny little pulley like this, right? Very small pulley. And this is a transmission, but it's a belt drive transmission because we call that ratio, right? A small pulley, big pulley ratio. So you can take a tiny little motor and turn a big thing, right? But this guy does it directly on the shaft. So I mean, like, you know, 210 foot-pound torque. And if you don't believe me, wait on phone Metai or Samsung or LG or Fish and Cracker. Oh, yes, right. People don't like ask questions because they're afraid of the answer because they're cowards. Or they're afraid they're not going to get the answer. Or they're going to be afraid things, right? Put a 2.4 in it. Take a little car, goes like thing, right? But I don't have 210 foot-pound on a train. So for all the retarded out there, maybe get those gear working and add 1 and 1, 2 and 2 together. Something's wrong here, right? Drum motor. And we have, now we have a speedboat. 55 miles an hour speedboat for a 22-foot long boat, you know, and the motor's tiny. But people don't talk about that. Oh, it's the most taboo, right? And some people, some companies, they're rearranging the cycle, or they're rearranging the sequence into the motor because now they find out the motor, it runs on resonance. So they rearrange the resonance, the tuning on the resonance, and they can make their motor way more efficient. Like, Einstein people, you know, your little controller, when you turn it on, you fill up the room with resonance because they figure out how to tune up the resonance. So they have a motor, it's very efficient and very powerful for the size of it. So I mean, like, you know, all those little secrets, those little dirty little secrets from people. I mean, like, you know, after a while you find all that stuff, you know. Look. It's very simple, right? We work, put it to sleep, literally. I was going to move that a little bit. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. There we go. So, we're going to be, you know, we just don't get it. I mean, I get it, but people don't get it. A engineer, whatever, try it. Take a sphere. Remove everything inside the sphere, right? And then fill it back up with air, but except in the air, you got to remove all the nitrogen out. And then try to ignite anything inside. Big lighter, matches, I don't care. Try to ignite it. They won't. Because you're removing the principal fuel, nitrogen. Nitrogen is a fuel, an explosive, because we've been using it for blowing this planet since we were born, right? I mean, when we're breathing, we don't really need it. We don't really use the nitrogen. We use the oxygen yet. And same thing, oxygen is supposed to be very explosive, right? It does. Remove the nitrogen out of the room, fill up the room with pure oxygen, walk in there with a fucking flaming lighter, and your lighter will die because it's no nitrogen to feed on. But they don't stop feeding the body what causes cancer. White sugar. White sugar is poison. Matter of fact, sugar is a narcotic. And if you don't believe me, try to import sugar in Canada or the United States without having a narcotic license. I did that in Canada. I got hit inside the head with Roger Sugar. He's got a monopoly in sugar. You know, and North America here. So I mean, like, you know, and you need it, it's narcotic. Same, you know, sugarcane is narcotic because sugar is the hardest addiction to break. You can get off crack, cocaine, amphetamine, what else is out there? I mean, whatever drugs you got, you can get out of that fairly easy, except sugar. So this is what, you know, the whole idea is to be able, you know, if you want to make power, you got to make sine wave. You got to create a sine wave generator, and then you got to remove the sine wave out of it. And you know, the only way you can do it is through spark gap. There we go. That one and that cut, I just put them together, right? You gotta be able to do 2 to 3 jump before you get a total release energy. And that's why when I did a video with the voting machine, I can take the power wire, single power wire, and go back to itself and spark on its own. I'm pushing more power through the end of the wire and I'm putting in the wire. So I mean, like, this is kind of, I don't know, voodoo, hocus pocus or whatever they call it. It's not. It's the way that the resonance when it hits those rods. This is tungsten rod. This is a small one, right? It's 532. It's for big welding. But I know the power plant have the exact same thing. 3 spark gap, but are those big barrels with 3 big horn on it. What power goes through, and one guy phoned me. They saw they had a big, that was a big power plant. When something went sideways and everything started blowing up, and by the time the smoke cleared out, they had to go and do an estimate of the damage. And one guy saw this thing. He said, "We know what they call it," but he said, "I didn't know what it was inside. I didn't know the principle of the inside." Well, that thing blew up. It was like about 8 to 10 foot long, about 3 foot across, like a long piece of case of a tubing middle, and it opened up like bananas. It blew up. So the potential, I guess, the pressure went too high into it and blew it up. And guess what was in the middle? 6-inch solid tungsten rod, 4 pieces. So they had 3 spark gap into it. So I'm just saying, why the hell the power plant use spark gap? Because they got to remove the fucking sine wave out of it, of the power to make it. So they can put the slash. You can't put a slash with a sine wave. It doesn't really work. So by removing the sine wave, they release all that energy. And then when it goes through the slasher or the cycler, right? Cycler, slasher. You know what cycle means, right? The word cycling. Cycle is a thing you use for cutting the brush, like the page, stuff like this. And when you say cycling, is the motion back and forth, or spinning around, right? That's what cycling is. So they put a cycle into the system, and he's chopping it up. Well, this what I made here. It chops it up. But they also make another thing. It compresses when it's not engaged to a contact. It's compressing because the generator doesn't stop spinning. You keep pushing the juice in, right? It's just like an air pump with no controller on it. Except this is your controller. It releases it because you get a certain timing on it, certain RPM. This is a slasher with 2 contact, right? Equal width contact, equal width of off. So if you turn that at 3600 RPM, you get, guess what? 60 cycle. Okay? So 60 cycle is what's coming on your top line. And then it goes into your transformer. And it brings the voltage down. The potential turns to what? So, and your cycle turns to AC wave or a sine wave. Right? So when, if you don't believe me, why AC is called AC wave, it's like this. And why when you get a sine wave, it's also like this. So it's an AC sine wave or just a sine wave. Right? Hard to tell. They look exactly the same. So okay, I see 2 birds going across the road. One is a white duck, right? And the other one is a black duck. I'm just saying it's 2 fucking ducks walking across the road. It's a different color, but it's the same fucking animal, right? So I mean, like, that's how they confuse